This is Australia, the sixth largest country in the world in terms of area, which is currently facing a significant crisis. Although Australia is considered one of the richest countries in the world, where salaries and the standard of living are much higher than in many developed countries, this country is gradually getting caught in a problem that could become a major headache in the future. Australia is famous worldwide for its wildlife and beautiful coastline. There are many species like kangaroos, pythons, and snakes that are found only in Australia. Well, I know Australia only because of its cricket team. Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting, Glenn McGrath. For me, Australia was just these cricket players. I didn't even know where Australia was or who these people were. But Australia is also very famous worldwide for another reason, and that is its strange geography. Australia is the only country that is also a continent, located south of the Indian Ocean and completely disconnected from the rest of the world. If we look at the map of Australia, one thing is very obvious that almost 90% area of Australia is desert, and that is why 85% population of Australia lives on the coastline. About 85 to 90% of Australia is completely empty. 75% of the population lives in these three cities: Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and all these three cities are on the coastline of Australia. To understand this population pattern of Australia, we have to go into history because Australia has remained anonymous in the entire human history, and it was discovered for the first time by a Dutchman named William Jane in 1606 when he was returning from Indonesia with trade goods, and on the way, due to a sea storm, his ship came here in the Tamar Sea, and there he saw an island in the distance. This was Australia. William went back and informed everyone about this island, and then in 1770, British explorer Captain James Cook set out on this journey with a few companions, and he and his companions stopped at Botany Bay on the eastern side of Australia. When they landed here, they had a fierce fight with the local people, and Captain Cook had to run away to save his life. Then after 8 years, Captain Arthur Phillip came here with 300 people on 11 ships, and he captured this coastline. After bringing this part under British control, he tried to discover the western side of Australia, but many of his companions died due to the hot weather of the desert and the intense thirst, and he was forced to return. Australia actually became famous in 1851 when huge reserves of gold were discovered in Bathurst, a village located 210 kilometers away from Sydney. In the next 20 years, 40% of the gold production of the whole world started happening in Australia. All this gold used to go to Britain from here, and the British government used this gold to maintain the rate of pound. These 20 years are called the years of gold rush. In these 20 years, a lot of people from Europe and America came and settled in Australia. When this gold was discovered, the population of Australia was 450,000, and after 20 years in 1871, this population had reached 1.7 million. From 1871 to 1900, Australia was divided into 6 colonies. Then in 1901, all these colonies were united and a country came on the world map with the name of Commonwealth State of Australia, and after this, the journey of Australia's progress started. At that time, immigration was not given to anyone other than white people, and it remained so for the next 60 years. Then finally in 1967, the non-white immigration policy was abolished and the criteria for immigration was changed from skin color to skill set, after which thousands of people from Asia, Middle East, and Pacific started coming and settling in Australia, and to this date, people from many cultures are settling in Australia. That is why Australia is now a multicultural country where you will find people of every race and religion. Today, Australia is one of the world's friendliest countries and ranks number 8 in terms of quality of life. For many people from South Asia, it is a dream country. However, Australia is getting trapped in a situation. In the past few years, Australia has topped the list of the least affordable countries in the world. 3 Australian cities have made it to the top 10 unaffordable cities list. Sydney is the second most expensive city in the world after Hong Kong. The housing market has played a significant role in making Australia unaffordable. Watching the video so far, you might think that since there is so much empty space in Australia, getting a house there must be very affordable. But the reality is quite the opposite. But before that, let me tell you a little about the Australian mentality. Anywhere in the world, owning a house is a desire for every person, but for Australians, a house is a national identity. In Australia, a house is considered a symbol of stability and prosperity. Even today, Having their own home is a top priority and dream for 70.5% of Australians. But this dream is slowly dying. Let me explain why I am saying this. In 1970, the average annual salary in Sydney was $4,200, and at that time, the price of a normal house was around $18,700. By 2024, this average annual salary has reached $74,000, which is 17 times more than the 1970 salary. But on the other hand, today, the average house price is $1.5 million, which is 80 times higher than the 1970 house price. This means that now, even if you save your entire salary for the next 20 years, it will be very difficult to buy a house because in 20 years, the house price will have increased even more. And this is not just the case in Sydney. It is the same in all major Australian cities. Even those earning $100,000 in Australia can only afford 13% of houses, and even for these 13% of houses, they have to take a huge mortgage. That is why Australian households have one of the largest debts in the world. And this situation is getting worse because the Australian population is increasing by 400,000 people every year. Australia's population growth is almost double that of Canada and the USA. The biggest reason for this population growth is immigration. Every year, thousands of people from China and South Asia come to Australia. Some of these people become Australian nationals after years, but many others, despite spending millions of dollars on their degrees, cannot obtain nationality. They continue to do odd jobs and take admissions in various small colleges to extend their visas, hoping that they will eventually get enough points to receive permanent residency. However, due to the high demand for housing from the large number of immigrants, the supply is significantly lower, causing a surge in house prices in Australia. This is because 90% of Australians live in just 4 cities. Even though there is plenty of vacant land in between, it is not suitable for cultivation or habitation. As a result, these 3 or 4 cities are the only options for the growing population. Since all jobs and universities are also located in these cities, immigrants and students flock there as well. One option Australia has is to impose restrictions on immigration, but this would severely impact its economy because almost 17% of Australia's economy is driven by foreign students. These students come to Australia to complete their education, get a job, and eventually secure PR. The university fees in Australia are very high, and the fees paid by students from India, Pakistan, and China significantly boost Australia's economy. Additionally, Australia's own population is insufficient to meet industry requirements, so it needs labor from outside, but labor that can speak English well and has relevant skills. Therefore, while Australia cannot reduce immigration, it has already made its policies stricter to ensure that only qualified individuals receive PR. As more people migrate to Australia every year, providing housing for them will become increasingly difficult. Although Australia is working on plans to build dams and bring water to the deserts to grow crops, it will take several years to execute this plan. Until then, Australia will have to build houses for incoming immigrants in the coastal cities, and immigrants will have to bear high rents and housing prices. Australia is truly an example of right planning. A country that was settled just 200 years ago is now one of the top economies in the world. Let's see how Australia tackles this housing crisis. If you like the video, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Until then, take care.